I'm Sharina Joshi, back again, and today I'm going to talk about the poems of Edward Kamau Brathwaite, The Wings of a Dove and Ananse. And these are the poems that are prescribed to you in your MA English elective IGNU, New Literatures in English Caribbean Literature, specifically MEG 8, Block 6. So one of the first poems that we are doing today is Wings of a Dove. Wings of a Dove was published in 1967 in the Rites of Passage. And last time I told you that the Rites of Passage was the first volume, which is ultimately going to develop into a trilogy, and it will be, completed by the islands. And Ananse is a poem which is from the islands, published 1969. The title of the poem is inspired by a popular ska tune. And what you have to understand about ska is it's a particular kind of drum beat, And if you hear the song, and I have given you the link on YouTube, okay, where you can hear the song, The Wings of a Dove, by a group called The Culture. And you will notice the drum beats, and it is 1 2 1 2. It is very simple, and it will ultimately lead to what we call reggae music. Reggae music is going to be associated with Bob Marley. It is, Bob Marley will popularize it. It is associated with Jamaica, and it is going to be also associated with the Rastafarians. Okay, or the Rastas as they are called. And I want you to notice this particular poem, the lyrics of the ska tune that is there. Oh, when I turn my eyes and see the wickedness at Babylon been carrying on. Oh, when I turn my eyes and see the things they are doing to the people on the street. Oh, that I have wings like a dove, I would fly to the hills and be at rest. Oh, that I have wings like a dove, I would fly, take it from me. These are the lyrics of Wings of a Dove, and this is part of the lyrics. Now, you will notice, of course, here in this, and I'm talking about it a little bit because it will lead directly into our own poem, Wings of a Dove. And over there, you will notice that it is going to be Babylon that will be repeated. Now, Babylon is a biblical image, and it's an image that is associated in the Bible with wickedness. It's going to be very, very wicked, it's a wicked world. In the Rasta poems and Rasta language and Rasta code, which derives a lot from the Old Testament, Babylon is going to be symbolizing the white world, the white civilization that has colonized them. It is going to be symbolizing, emblematizing the consumer world that is now, all around. And therefore, notice that this music and these poems, whether it is, the lyrics of songs, or when you're going to come to Brathwaite, they will be, taking from Rasta language and code, and especially in Wings of a Dove. So that is why I brought this in. And I would love you to actually hear the song, so that you can understand what ska is, and then you can hear Bob Marley and hear what reggae music is like. Wings of a Dove is also, or could also have been inspired by Psalm 55, line 2, oh, that I had wings like a dove, I would fly away and be at rest. And you notice in all of this that there is this idea of flying away, of being at rest, of moving away from, this world, this material world. Rites of Passage was the first volume of the Arrivants trilogy. It's a poem of protest. It delves into the past. It explores, in fact, the history of the African community, of the descendants of the African community. And it explores forced migration, the slavery, the enslavement, the movement into the Caribbean and then into America on slave ships. And what is the effect of this migration? Cut off from roots, they are feeling the rootlessness. The descendants of those people are feeling the rootlessness. There is no continuity. And, as one recognizes, a failure to have any roots, a failure to have a sense of home, perpetuates the idea of discontinuity, puts you outside time and space, as it were. Okay? So in the Rites of Passage in 1967, when he is going to, for the first time, write poetry and also use language experimentally, you are going to see also the authority, the power that he is going to give the marginalized voices. Okay, the marginalized voices are the voices, of those who live at the edge of the rather westernized, consumerist society. This is especially true in the, in the 50s and the 60s, when there is a particular kind of world that is being, advertised for the Caribbean, a world of clear waters, white beaches, and beauty. It seems Edenic, it seems like a paradise. And in that paradise, you're going to have more and more hotels, a developmental pattern that is entirely catering to the West. And it's a world of, as he's going to say in the poem, of silk and wine, of wining and dining. And that world, seems to be the center now, while the margin is the world of erstwhile African slaves and even those who are forced into poverty. So there is a critique of the contemporary world, definitely, a critique of what was emerging immediately in the aftermath of independence across the Caribbean, and it is that he explores. So it is, a going back into, if I could call it, history, but also looking at the present. And I am, from the opening lines quoting this, and I want you to notice this, these lines. Drum, skin, whip, lash, master's sons, cutting edge of heat. Now notice how the beats are very simple, unlike what we have in the pentameter in English poetry, which is not like that. It is a 1, 2, 1, 2 that goes on. Drum, skin, and the idea of the skin, of the drum and the drum beats that come from there, that creates, even as you are under the sun, the master's sun, in the heat, with the whiplash on your skin. So notice how, both in Walcott as well as in Brathwaite, you are going to recognize a density, a concentration of images, a density, how images become layered and they sort of, merge together, creating multiple meanings. So while the drum skin reminds you of the drum beats, and the drum beats remind you of the fact that there are people, who are going to send messages through the drums, that it is a continuation of a life. The whiplash reminds you of what they suffered, of the violence and the oppression, or as the Rastafarians would say, downpression, because they're going to change language. Okay, so, the downpression, under the master's sun, even the world in which they live is dominated by the masters, and the cutting edge, which is both the cutting edge of the lash as well as the cutting edge of heat. And this is how he is going to experiment with language. And I thought, that this is a good way for you to get the sense of it before you come to the poem itself. Now the poem begins with this line, brother man, the Rasta man, okay. And brother man, the Rasta man immediately places the poem in the Rastafarian world. And it's very clear that he draws from the Rastafarian language over here. The Farai actually, and also called Rastafari, and Ras meaning king or chief, and Tafari is the tribe name. It was a subculture, a counterculture that developed in Jamaica in the 1930s. The Jamaican politician leader Marcus Garvey prophesied in 1927 that the black race would be liberated after a black king who would be crowned in Africa. And soon after that, you have Haile Selassie, who was crowned in Ethiopia. His family name was Tafari, before he became king. And Haile Selassie also suggests, the belief in the Trinity. Rastafari, simply because it is rooted very deeply in the language of the Old Testament, in any number of ideas that are drawn from the Old Testament, is considered by outsiders as a religion, but it is not really a religion. It does not have any churches, it doesn't have any temples. It is a way of life. You can't get converted to it, you can adopt it if you want. You have to look, even when you look at the pictures over here that I have placed over here of Bob Marley, and for example, on the left side of your screen, reggae musician, who is going to popularize reggae. You will notice even in his music, there are a lot of Rastafari terms that he uses, okay. And when I say it's a way of life, and that got very popularized during the 60s and the 70s, okay, it becomes popular through music, it becomes popular in America, and then slowly into the world, of music and literature. So when you're looking at it, you see, when I say it's a way of life, you notice a lot of things. They are going to reject private property. They are going to be vegan or vegetarian. They will not eat meat, and especially red meat. If they eat fish, it will be very small fish, really. They will not smoke or have alcohol. They will use herbs. Their food is cooked with herbs, not salt. And they do smoke ganja or marijuana. Marijuana is taken, by them because, again, it's a herb, and it is supposed to have properties that will spiritually enlighten them, giving them a heightened sense of reality. And it is also true that for most of us, it is, something that is taboo. But, when you look at the dreadlocks that are there, and there are any number of pictures, if you go onto the internet, they will not cut their hair, because in Leviticus they say that thou shalt not wear baldness. Okay, so they will have long hair, and they will coil that hair. And for many in the West, it might be very odd, but for us in India, it is also very interesting, because many of our sadhus, especially, like certain groups of sadhus, especially those who worship Shiva, are the ones who have long locks of hair, that we call in Hindi jataएं. So they all have jatas, basically, and which is known as dreadlock, partially because they were also figures of fear. In popular culture, there were also people who would be said that, the dreadlock guy is going to come and take you away, you better be good. They lived on the margins of society, they lived in shanty towns, they lived on occupied land, in the corner. And of course, in places like Kingston in Jamaica, there were also times when, the police raided them and tried to in a way, control them or keep them away from government land, okay? So the dreadlock is what they symbolizes them. Also the chalice. The chalice is really, the kind of cup and a pipe in which you smoke marijuana. And the colors red, yellow, and green are associated with them. Also that because they took the language from the Old Testament, and I remember, they rejected in many ways the contemporary, many of the contemporary Western social practices, especially commercial narrative, consumerism. They believed in a very simple life. So their language and the codes and metaphors of that language are going to be very, very significant. So Africa becomes Zion, ancient Israel. Okay, the blacks are the lost tribes of Israel. And what you're going to have over here is also the Western society is the wicked civilization of Babylon. So language codes are going to change completely, and they kept changing codes, interspersing codes with normal language. That is very, very significant for us. So when you're looking at Wings of a Dove, Wings of a Dove actually draws upon Rastafari images. Rastafari broke the hegemony of Western language, creating their own codes and signs. Babylon suggests, as I have said, the white civilization, commercial world. It draws from the book of Revelation, and in the book of Revelation, Babylon is going to be destroyed ultimately. Zion is Africa, but Zion is also a subjective space of the mind. Okay, and the poem embodies a new aesthetic. He really here is going to experiment with language, and it reflects a creolization of language. He splits words, creates new meanings, as it were, when you look at it. And the most significant use in Rastafarian language or codes is the use of the word I. Okay, Rastafari, and I, Rastafari, in Babylon's boom town, okay. So Babylon, of course, is Western world, crazed by the moon, and crazed by the moon, in the sense that it is night. He shares this world with the mice. He lives in a shanty town, and the peace of this chalice, when he smokes up the marijuana, I, prophet and singer. And they use words like I tell, I and Yah, which also gives you a sense of I tell is a turn of vital, downpression is a change of oppression, I is me and my brothers, I and Yah is me and God. Okay, but they will not use me because it is something that is used to oppress us or downpress the colonized subject or the slaves. Okay, so he splits words and creates new meanings. So look at this, rise, locksman. Locksman is clearly a Rastafari. Solomon, and by breaking it, solo as single and solo as alone, and solo, and Solomon as wise man, arise. And he coins new words and spellings, as you will see, dem, la, na, that you're going to see, and captures the drum beats in his poetry, the sounds in his poetry. So the speaker of the poem draws on the Rasta world. Opening line sets the tone and theme, the Rasta man. And the Rasta man is on the margins, living in a shanty town, sharing his world with mice who come out at night, smoking ganja and escaping or being at peace. And in the bauble world which he inhabits, the bright bauble world, as he calls it, okay. And a contrast is built with the bright world of tourists, hotels, casinos, the Babylon of that world, okay, the Babylonian world. and he talks about brown, white, black men, and how he fears and how they fear him. The brown man, and notice the clean-faced brown man. So mixed race, East Indian, okay, white black men who behave like white men, who control all the resources and dominate their world with caw, flip-flop, hip-hop, and the caw seems to suggest their entire, constant, talking, which means nothing at all, the speeches that they give, the empty talk, and the flip-flop and hip-hop, their movement across the stones. So Rasta denies the world, no, says he, denies the consumerist world of, open quote, silks and wine. And finally, in the end of the poem, there is a sense of action, of an apocalypse in the final lines. And what he says is, learn them that them got them nothing, but them bright pride baubles that will burst them when the flame them from on high them raise and roar them, and the poor them rise and rage them in the glory of the Lord. So notice the dem, D-E-M, which is really a change of T-H-E-M, that it is the African inflection that is there, and says that they have to learn that they have got nothing, that these bright baubles are nothing, that they will all burst when the flame comes in that apocalyptic moment, raise and roar them, and they will be destroyed, they'll be raised down. And also suggests a very affirmative action, a revolutionary action that will come in the glory of the Lord. The Lord will give it to them, and the poor them rise and rage them. Okay, so this idea of, affirmative action, of a revolutionary, of even the most quiet action has to be revolutionary, that they have to learn, the others have to learn that this world is really a material world and nothing. Okay, so that would suggest, the movement of the poem, but what we also have to see is the language of the poem. So when you look at Wings of a Dove and then Ananse, notice that the language of the poems reflect its radical potential. And this is very important to assert a Caribbean identity. Okay, it's a radical potential. What do I mean by that? That, through the language alone, that, you can assert identity. The evolution of style, the drum poetry with beats, 1, 2, 1, 2. And how the style evolves. When you're looking at the first volume, The Rites of Passage, with, a kind of pun on R-I-T-E-S and R-I-G-H-T-S, and the word passage, which is also, when you say rites of passage, you're growing up. And when you say the passage, it also means a physical passage, like a passage in the Atlantic. And what are the rights that they lost? And did they really gain anything? So there's so much that you can read into the language itself. Okay, and notice the way the repetition of words, rise, rise. Okay, thread in Ananse, and the change in standard punctuation. Most significantly, through these poems and through the trilogy, you will see a repossession of the past, of the African roots and culture, of history through linguistic transformation, of the myths and the figures, of the folk culture of Africa. How the culture has traveled. It may be underground, it may be unknown, it is submerged, okay? But its continuity is there in the oral culture, on the plantations, in the labor, among the labor, in the maroon communities who went away. The myths and the figures of the folk culture continue and amalgamate more, are transfused and metamorphed. Ananse this is very, very interesting. The title, you were told, derives from the folklore character of West Africa, especially Ghana, and the Ashanti tribe oral tradition. It traveled through the Middle Passage to Caribbean, and Ananse is the Akan god of stories, wisdom, knowledge, and also creation. The god of all stories ever told. Akan stories, when you're looking at it, he's a spider, sometimes he's a man, sometimes he's a spider with a man's head. In some myths, he's a creator, he's a god of lightning. In Caribbean literature, he's a trickster figure. He tricks people. But what is important about it is that he's a hero. He's not really a villain because he's smart. He triumphs over powerful opponents through his wisdom, through his skill, through his cunning, and even through his trickery. So he becomes, in the folklore of, the descendants of slaves in the Caribbean, as well as among other people, a symbol of resistance. And it is also a symbol of continuity with the past, an assertion of identity within the bondage of slavery, telling tales, relaying stories, inspiring strategies. Jamaica had the largest number of Ashanti slaves, and the stories were well preserved with proverb. At the end of it, there'll be a proverb and teachings, that this is how you should do, this is how you should work. And he is also, Ananse is a figure which has been reinvented through multi-ethnic exchanges. Ananse was published in 1969, and it is both a house spider and an inspirational figure. And in the poem, Brathwaite emphasizes the continuity between past and present. At one level, right at the beginning of the poem, you will see it is frozen, inert, there it is, yet thinking, remembering. Memories of lost native culture, memories stored in the dark trunk of the attic, ancient histories, and like a chrysalis that is going to burst out, right? And fly away like a butterfly or grow. It spins, and like a chrysalis spins a cocoon, it spins riddles and tales and proverbs, and and grows, and it waits. And then remember what is important about this particular figure. It's words. They are teller of tales. They are keepers of memories. In the stories and the tales, the memories of the past. Okay, so, it is those who hear Ananse are figures from contemporary history, like Taki, rebels, leaders who hear his voice, who hear the stories carried through time by the god of all stories ever told. Together with being Ananse, the figure in the poem is also Legba, the lame god of the gateway of the Jamaican world, of the Caribbean world, and Hephaestus, Vulcan in Roman mythology, lame yet a craftsman, a blacksmith who uses fire. And Legba, the lame god of the gateway, is a god between transitions. These are worlds of transitions. What you're having in Ananse, in the last volume of the trilogy of Islands, is this absolutely fascinating, if I could use the word, the idea of transformations that take place all the time in the history, the revolts, the coming together that is there. So the community sits together, burns a fire, tells stories. And now Ananse, earlier fossilized, watching through quartz, watching through glass, looking carefully, waiting like a chrysalis to be regenerated through the stories and memories of the community itself. Okay, so it's a symbolic coming together at the end, of fragments of nature and communities, because the Caribbean is like fragments, as Brathwaite would say. And Ananse is now at the rooftop there, up there, and really standing, and where the brooms cannot reach. The spider but also Ananse. And in the tales that the people will hear and retell, there will be, and what you're going to have is a change, a transformation, a movement through another gateway, perhaps. So Ananse becomes this symbol of resistance and hope for the people. What you must notice also is how, there are heterogeneous and interpenetrating symbols in the poem. And in an interview, Brathwaite says how the metaphors and images interlock and interweave and interpenetrate each other, so that you increasingly have a seamless kind of poetry, increasing without punctuation, where images inform, flow, and influence each other. It is a kind of surrealism as well, but magic realism, I think, is nearer to it, because it is a transformation of reality into the prism of imagination and light. And that is what you need to realize, the interlocking, interweaving of images, that we will see. And when you read the poem, that is what you must notice. And how punctuation becomes less and less. How he will say, thread, thread, weave. How the images will then flow into each other. Okay, images of nature, images of people, and it is therefore a coming together that will transform a reality, but through the prism of imagination and light. And remember, in this poem, it begins with the prisms, of glass or quartz, through which you have the unblinking eyes of Ananse. Thank you.